All right, class, so we're going to look at our images from Module 8 for plasticity. So we're going to start off here with Joshua's image, and this is one of the strongest images that we have this week as far as understanding plasticity. So we're going to start off looking at the settings as normal. So ISO 100, 18 millimeters, really wide angle. F5 at 1/40th of a second. So those settings all look good. But if we come to the develop module, we can see that there's a lot of area that's blown out. So I would bring down this exposure. It doesn't bother me so much that something in the background way back here might be blown out, but on the surface here, that becomes a distraction. And on the flowers here, that becomes a distraction. So I'd pull back on the exposure some. Focus is nice and sharp here. What was the shutter speed again? 1/40th of a second, so you could probably hand hold that, no problem. The light, so the light is a little bit tricky here. Whenever you're shooting in the middle of the day and you have really hard light, so this was shot at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're gonna have really bright highlights. And that's what's happening here, is the light is so bright and it's so hard that we're getting really bright highlights. So the light here would probably work better on more of an overcast day or maybe even later into the evening instead of right here when it's so bright. The composition is really symmetrical here, right? We have something in the very center of the frame, the table and the flowers, and then we have a chair on either side of them. We also have the background here, the wall and the gate or fencing right here to further that symmetry. So the plasticity here is what we really want to look at. The strength here is phenomenal. So the first thing that you notice when you look at this is the bright red roses in the arrangement here. They look like they're coming towards you. They look like they're advancing in the frame. And that's what we're talking about with plasticity. So you can create plasticity all different ways, and we'll talk about that with a number of the other images, but this is a great example of how color and shape bring something on this two-dimensional surface and make it look like it's coming towards us. So that's one. The next thing to look at is the chair to the right. So that chair on the right starts to come towards us as well. So that has more strength. And you can see how this chair feels like it's closer to us and this chair feels like it's receding simply because of the colors that are being used here. So this is a great example of using color for plasticity. Looking at your contact sheet, let's see. I think the more you can show of these chairs so we can see the edges of them, the better it's going to be. It looks like it's about the same for all of these. And I think this is your strongest image as far as plasticity. This is a really strong image. That's why I used it first. All right, this is Catherine's image. We're at ISO 720, 29 millimeters, f8 at 1/20th of a second. So that 1/20th of a second is really hard to hand hold. You hopefully were on a tripod for this or really bracing yourself for it because this is nice and sharp. We don't have an issue with focus here. The light here is phenomenal. The light's coming in, it looks like from a window, and it's highlighting the edge of this string, or I'm not sure exactly what we're looking at, but this decoration as it's coming across, so it adds a three-dimensionality to it. The composition, having it go out of focus but create a line, we're pulled back into the frame and we're pulled into the frame. You could probably clean up the composition a little bit by not having quite as much negative space over here. Right, something like this keeps us right in the frame. The door over here has some texture to it, so it does pull us out of the frame a little bit and away from what's really important. So I would try to keep the image focused just on where you want us in the frame. And then how does plasticity work here? So immediately when I look at this, my eye goes to where it's most in focus, and that's over here. And then I jump across to over here where it's also in focus. But because of the way the lights hit this leaf and this leaf, I come out, and that's where I sort of have this refocusing. So I kind of have a refocus between here and here, and then I have a major refocus as I try to get this in focus and I try to understand what this is. And that creates some really nice three-dimensionality here. Even moving back here, we have a little bit of that plasticity happening. So this is another great example of using plasticity. Looking at your contact sheet, it looks like you have some maybe self-portraits here. as you're moving through. That door, I think, adds a nice element as far as design, but I think it's too distracting and pulls away too much from the ropes or whatever we're looking at here. So having this just against the white wall, as you did, works better than having it with as much of this in the background as you do. All right, and then this is Jonah's image. Yeah, Jonah's image. You're at ISO 100, 28 millimeters, f10 at 1/250th of a second. And it sounds like you guys are in this shelter in place, as most of us are. And the one thing that your family is able to do is get out and get on the bike. So this is really fun to incorporate that. Some of our classes are doing isolation portraits, and I think they're some of the strongest images because we can all kind of relate to them. So emotionally, we're drawn in. So your settings all look good here. All of your subjects are pretty close to in focus. The light is the one thing that I think you could have improved here. So you're working with a really bright sunny day, just like what we saw with Joshua's image. And that's creating some pretty harsh shadows on your subjects. So when we're looking here, our eye's going to go to the brightest place, right? So that's the edge of his face, the edge of her face, maybe her hair a little bit, and also the street. So what could you do so that we had more light on their face? I think just making them look a different direction. So maybe instead of using the street, which is such a strong compositional element here, using that line of the street and the kind of frame within a frame that's happening with the trees, both of those are really strong elements. But if you had them turned so the light was actually on their face or all the way behind them, I think that would work better. So that might mean moving them so you're not using the street in such a direct way as it is done here, or by shooting it at a different time of day. The composition works great. We move through it really nice and easily, especially like the red on the bike brings me to the red on his glasses and the red on her glasses, and then the blue here and the blue here and the blue here really helps move me and guide me through the image. And then just the personality that you captured on all of these family members of yours is really cute. Like this biker gang that's so innocent and playful as they're riding down the streets on their cruisers. So really fun image. Now, how does the plasticity work? So the plasticity works because we move from one object to another, and we have to kind of move forward and backwards in space in order to find that and in order to refocus our eyes to see that, moving from one individual to the next, even to the like characters on his bike here. All of those work as plasticity, right? Here, 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 and here. We can also, if you kind of like glaze over your eyes a little bit, you can see how the bikes start to be advancing towards us. So the brightness of the turquoise and the red on the bike sort of advance towards you. So I want you, when you're thinking of plasticity and trying to understand plasticity, this is a great example of it, but also think about how you can kind of like blur your eyes, take a really wide focus, and by doing that, see how the colors recede and advance in the frame. It's like I already had looked through this, and these are just so smart, so playful, and work really well for plasticity also. You have them playing around on the trampoline. Those are all working well. And these angle of view, I think, work also as far as plasticity goes and kind of making us try to re-understand what we're looking at.